Hi girls, this is the first time that I'm trying to do something like this. Let me know if you enjoy it, if it's helpful for you. Um, I just want you to have different resources for when you're studying, or maybe when you're doing a homework, or when you have doubt with any of the topics that we're going to see on this month. If it's helpful, you can find the other topics on its learning. I'm going to be uploading each topic so you can have it for the last month when you're going to have exams. Okay, so let's start with this lesson. We actually saw this recently. The name of the topic is understanding place value. Okay, so we saw 3 different words of the day on that lesson, right? Sorry, I'm just getting used to writing and speaking at the same time. Okay, so for that lesson, we explore the multiplicative relationships between places in multi-digit numbers. What does multi-digit numbers mean? That it have different digits on the numbers. So there can either be numbers with 2 digits, 3 digits, or more. Okay, that's just it. Okay, so for the first thing, I'm going to ask you, what is place value? Right? So place value, the meaning that you wrote on your notebook, it's a number system that assigns every digit a value based on its place in a number. What does it mean? That if I have a 1 and a 0, it's going to assign one value based on the place they're at. So the 0 is going to have a different value as the 1, right? That's basically what it means. I'm going to erase this so you don't get confused. Right. So the second word of the day that we saw that day was standard notation. Standard notation is the most common way of representing numbers. So it's basically the way that we write numbers, the way that we read numbers. It's standard. What standard means is like normal, or like for example, if I write 100, I'm gonna write it like this, right? An awful 100, but I'm still gonna write it. And if I write, I don't know, 2,356, that is going to be the standard notation for that number. Now, when I talk about expanded form means the number as the sum of the values of each digit. I'm going to do several examples of how can you do expanded form, right? So first, we can use words to get the standard form to be expanded. So, for example, in here I can put 2,000, right? That is a word. And then 300. 50. I would put, sorry for that. I will put 5 tens. And then the last number would be the 6. So it's going to be 6 ones. This is one way in which you can write expanded form. Now, which other way can you use? For example, you could use that you give each digit a standard notation, right? So you just put like 2,000, right? Plus 300 plus 50 plus 6. This will also give you 2,356, right? So that is another way in which you can use expanded form. Okay, so the last word of, that was the last word of the day. Okay, so let's continue with the lesson. Now, we have, like we talked about, we have different places, right, in which we give a name to each place. So now, let's try and make a straight line, okay? If I try and give a place to each number, I will have the ones that are the first numbers, right? And then I will have the tens, and I will have the hundreds, and also I will have the thousands. And then if we go to a super big number, we could even have the 10,000s, right? And we could also have the millions. I'm not going to go further. I mean, it's infinite, the numbers that we could see with place value. But for now, we're just going to get to millions. So what is ones? The ones are the ones that are in the first place, right? The tens go to the second place, right? This one over here. I'm going to highlight it so you don't miss it. Okay, so these ones are the ones, these ones are the tens. And we have the hundreds, right? I'm going to highlight it. We have the thousands. Oh, that keeps being a one, okay? Don't forget. We have the 10,000s. Okay, so now we usually use a comma. I forgot the comma over here. But we use the comma to identify when the thousands start. So we have the 10,000s, right? And that would be over here. And finally, we have the millions. Okay, so I skipped the 100,000 because it was not going to fit. But over here, fits the 100,000s, okay? What would be the 100,000s? They have 4 zeros, right? So that's just so you know. I'm sorry, couldn't fit on my beautiful, beautiful table. So now, there's another way in which you can see maybe in a problem that they're giving you the place value, right? So you can see written in a problem maybe an O, that means ones, or maybe you could see a T, that means tens, or maybe an H, that means exactly what you thought, hundreds, or maybe a K, that means thousands. Now, why a K and not another T? Well, because on tens, we already using the T, right? So we're not going to do another T or like a TH. It can be a little bit complicated if we do that. So let's use the K, right? Like in kilo, you know that is 1,000. So we use the K, and that way we don't forget. Now with the 10,000s, we usually use numbers and then the K, right? So that's how you say 10,000. 100,000 would be the same. It would be 100 and then the K. And lastly, millions. Well, we still have the M spared, so we use the M, right? That is another way in which you can find the place values in a problem or in real life. You'll maybe see it, or maybe you can also use it when you're writing your notes, or when you're telling something to a friend, or you're making, I don't know, you went to eat and it was like tens or hundreds, whatever helps you. You know math, you can use it on a daily basis. We just don't give ourselves the time to notice where. Okay, so I'm gonna keep going. You know, I speak quite a lot, so I'm gonna try to do this easier, okay? So for example, let's think we have, I don't know, let's use the number that we already used, 2,305 10/6. Okay, so first, if I had only the 200, I'm gonna write it here because I'm gonna forget, 356, right? So if I have only the 2, I will write the 2 on the ones, right? I will write it over here, okay? But if I have, for example, a 23, I will write it like this, 23, right? Because now it moved one place value to go to the tens, and now it's a 20 instead of a 2. Okay, so if I want to go to 235, I will go like this, 235. Now you notice that the 2 is now on the value of the hundreds, right? That's why it's called a 235. That's how we're getting closer. Okay. And now we have the number that we used on the past examples, and we have 2,356, right? So 6 keeps being a 1, then 50, it's a 10, then we have the 300, right? And now the 300 is in the hundreds, and finally the 2 is now part of the thousands. So we have a big number. Now, what if I told you that we add a 0, right? So now I could have 23 thousands, right? Let's add a comma over here so you don't forget. 560. That will be a different number, and you see that we scooch to the left all of the numbers, and now the 2 has a value of 10,000s. Now it's just not 1,000 or 100 or a tens, it's 10,000, okay? So I hope that was a little bit clearer. I'm gonna keep going. You made some problems on page 37. If you want to study for the exam, that's probably a right path to study. Check your notes and check your math journal. Now, there are 2 ways to visualize place value, right? So, we talked about this in class, but I want to make sure that you understand, because sometimes we prefer one way rather than the other because it's easier for us. But it's always important that you know that there are 2 ways, because I will not always be your teacher and you will not always have to use one or the ways, okay? So you need to at least know that there are 2 ways. So the first way is to see it as a multiplication, right? I'm gonna try and draw the worst line ever, apparently. And then I'm going to put 1s and 10s. Let's just work with until thousands, okay? So let's not get us a little complicated. 1s, there you go. 10s, hundreds. Wow, what is that? 100. And finally, thousands. Comma, you remember? That's right. I hope you're taking notes of this, or either you're doing your homework and it's going to be amazing. Okay? So let's just do several of this so we have different examples. So I don't know. I'm going to use one of the numbers that you had on page 37, okay? That was 2,300. That would be it. So if I'm just going to use, for example, the 2, I'm going to place the 2 over here, right? On the 1s. Now, if I'm going to use, I erased it. If I'm going to use the 3 now as a 23, I'm going to multiply times 10, right? I'm going to multiply the 2 times 10, and I'm going to move it to the tens row, okay? Column, I mean. I'm going to move it to the tens column. So it's going to be over here. The 2, now it's a 20. Why? Because it was multiplied times 10. Don't forget. Okay? So now the 3 fits over here. Now, if I were to have a 230, right? I will need to multiply the 23 times 10 again. Okay? So I could have the 230. And lastly, if I were to have 2,300, I will need to multiply again let's do it in another color. 230 times 10, so it will give us the thousands, right? So have you noticed a pattern over here, or is it just me? Okay, I know that you're super smart and that you notice the pattern, and I'm going to explain it anyways. So maybe you notice it, but I'm going to put it into words. The pattern is, if you multiply times 10, you add one place, right? So the first time we multiplied 1 times a 10, and we moved to the tens, right? And then I'm going to put another color. Let's pick another color. Okay, and then you multiplied again times tens, and you moved to the left on another place. So now, if we multiply the tens times a 10, it adds a 0, right? It adds another place. So now we move to the hundreds. And lastly, if we multiply once again times a 10, it adds another 0. And that means we're going to move to another place. So we're on the thousands, and we have a bigger number. Now, that is one of the ways in which you can understand place value. Place value is just multiplying from one place to the other, and to get to the other place, you just need to multiply times the number 10, okay? I hope you know the table of 10, otherwise this is gonna be a little bit complicated, but I'm sure you know it because it's super easy and you've been studying it since what? 4th grade? So I'm gonna do another table, exactly like the one we used. Exactly, what was it? Still thousands, right? So again, ones, trying to be quick and not talk. Oh, made a mistake. Tens, hundreds, and lastly, one with a comma, 1,000, right? So that is my table. I'm gonna leave the places over here. Now, the second way is to see it as 1/10 of the value it has in the place on its left, right? So I'm gonna write it down to make it easier, and then I'm going to explain, okay? So we have 6,500, and then we get 550, right? Wait, I'm going to finish this, just so I can explain more comfortably. Okay. You see that now we go backwards, right? I'm going to explain why, but for now, what you need to know is that, for example, we have the 6 in 6,500, and it's worth 6,000 because it is in the thousands place, right? We noticed that already. I'm going to use another color. The 6, it's in the thousands place. But the 6 in 650, it's in the hundreds place, right? And it's in the hundreds place because it is worth 1/10 of 6,000. Okay? So, I know it sounds a little bit complicated, but it is not. Usually, finding the 1/10 of a number is the same as dividing the number, okay, by 10, you know? So, for example, if I have, I don't know, let's make it simple. If I have a 60 and I want to get the 1/10 of a 60, I put the 60 over the 10. And this is the same as if I had the 60 inside of the house, ready to be divided, right? So that is how we get to have from 6,000 to 600. We only divided this huge number and found the 1/10 of that huge number. So that is the second way in which you can find place value. And I think that's pretty much it. We saw the entire class. Now, if you have any doubts, don't be afraid to reach for my help or anything. I'll see you in the next class. Bye.